I got a great question from someone, and this was in the form of a comment on another video about the practice of self-observation. And I already replied to that comment, but I also wanted to address it in a video of its own, in case anyone else needed clarification, and also to elaborate a little more. So I'll actually just read the question. This person asked, would you say someone is conscious when they're aware of an unconscious behavior? Or are they only conscious when the behavior changes, when they no longer exhibit the pattern compulsively, unconsciously? My understanding would be that to be truly conscious, you wouldn't exhibit that pattern again. And that just having knowledge or awareness about your unconscious patterns isn't being conscious, but more of a recognition, an insight. So once again, this is a great question. At what point can one truly say that they are conscious of something? Well, whatever the unconscious behavior happens to be, as soon as we are conscious of it, it is no longer an unconscious behavior, at least in that moment, because we can, of course, exhibit that same behavior at a later time and once again be unaware of it. So to be conscious of something means to be conscious in the moment. And so there may be times when we're aware of it and other times when we're not. But I would also say that there are degrees of conscious awareness, just as there are many layers to our behavior. Being conscious of the behavior is only partial awareness. It's only at the surface level. We must also be conscious of all that is giving rise to that behavior. When you see the entire mechanism from root to fruit, then you can say that you're fully conscious of it. But even then, it may not cease entirely or immediately. And there can be a few reasons for this as to why the behavior may continue to persist even after we've come to see what is at the root of it. If we resolve what is at the root of it, which often means that we simply come to see that it's a false belief or a misperception, or we might see that it's simply causing unnecessary suffering. Oftentimes, just seeing the falseness of something is enough to disempower it. If there is some illusion, just seeing through the illusion, you're no longer fooled by it. Just seeing that something is not helping us but is actually hindering us can often be enough to disengage it. And so resolving the root is like shutting off the power source to that mechanism. But it can be compared to shutting off the power to a fan. Even when there is no longer any power to drive the fan, the blades will continue to spin for a time, gradually slowing down before they come to a complete stop. In a similar way, our behaviors and even our emotional reactions can become so habitual that even when there's no underlying driving force, they may still play out for a time simply due to habit. But over time, they will tend to decrease. They gradually become less frequent. If it's an emotional reaction, it will also decrease in its intensity and duration. And perhaps in time, these things will cease entirely, no longer reoccurring. But there can be other reasons why these things may continue. In some cases, it could simply be that it's not anything to be too concerned about, that it isn't really doing us any harm. Or there could even be some necessity to it, depending on what it is as well as the circumstances. For instance, it may not be constructive to express anger in many situations. In some situations, it may even be detrimental. But there can be some situations in which it may be necessary, such as maintaining healthy boundaries or protecting oneself or others. But it can also be that even though we are conscious of what is at the root of some behavior, it still may not be fully resolved. We may not have spent enough time or attention examining it and understanding it thoroughly. And so we may have to go back and revisit it many more times before it's fully resolved. If it's a belief, for example, we may need to spend some time really examining it, questioning that belief, challenging it. And we may have to do this several times before we come to fully realize that it's false. Even if we have some initial sense of its falseness, we may still need to confirm that it is indeed false. And that may take a bit of time. But every time that this behavior arises, we might take that as an opportunity to explore it a little more deeply. But one thing to keep in mind is that we can't resolve everything. There's just too much for one lifetime. So we have to decide what to attend to by matter of urgency and importance. What are those patterns of thought and behavior which are the most detrimental to ourselves and to others, which hinder us the most, that get in the way of life, or cause the greatest degree of suffering? We don't need to get bogged down with every little thing or to aim for perfection. Some things we might simply accept as they are and not be concerned at all with trying to change them. We only have so much time and so much energy, and so we need to use that time and energy wisely.